It's almost like the one place for you to get everything marketing related done if you're a creator, if you're a brand, if you're an artist online. So we're really excited about that and exploring what it looks like to just be able to execute right from, as easy as possible from idea to live.
This podcast is sponsored by Allfeed, a decentralized blockchain solution for the music industry. Produced by Amplitude Ventures, your partners in early stage music tech. Take a moment to imagine an AI-driven future where your next hit campaign writes itself. Leading marketing for SZA, Childish Gambino, and 21 Savage today is all about honest stories and simple, practical tips on how Megh and Chuka use Symphony to supercharge artist growth. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Song Connections podcast. Today we have Megh and Chuka in the studio. Welcome.
How's it going? Thanks for having us.
How's it going, guys?
I've been very excited about this episode, and you have founded a company called Symphony. And we're going to dissect your career, your company's trajectory, and your journey until now. But before we begin that, for people who don't know you, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, I'm Meg. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Symphony. Chuka and I have been working together for like the last 10 years, multiple companies now. But, my day-to-day focus is really working on the development side, the product side of Symphony, working with Chuka on helping get business development deals done. Historically, though, my background is in development. So, like initially was a developer engineer, moved to LA in 2016, linked Chuka, and we were like, let's build dope stuff for artists. And 10 years later, we're still doing it. That's a quick background on me.
And, similar to Meg, my background was in tech, was working as a front end designer with Techstars, working with a bunch of different startups. My career started in 2013, where I linked up with Childish Gambino right before his project because of the internet. We helped him with a bunch of his rollout stuff across because of the internet. The time that involved building websites, a lot of front end development, as you could imagine, in the blog era. And that led to kind of my fascination, or our overall fascination with marketing records on the internet, at the point of sale. And that led to me meeting Meg in 2016, where we started our first company, Integral Studio, which is an agency focused on marketing records on the internet. And through those learnings over the years, that led to the birth of Symphony in 2020.
Amazing. And you guys work with amazing names and worked in records that's been Grammy nominated. And it's a really interesting angle you've had from tech to marketing, marketing and tech combined, and now to something scalable for artists. But before we sort of go into the journey, could you maybe describe Symphony a bit better? What is exactly you guys do now?
Yeah, I'm sure Chuka has his own ways of describing it, but the way I usually look at it or talk about it is it's almost like the one place for you to get everything marketing related done if you're a creator, if you're a brand, if you're an artist online. This really came from, me and Chuka spent so much time at our agency solving these problems at hand, right? You have this artist, this brand, they have this, at least 10 different platforms of data out there generating data. They expect you to manage that. And then somehow you have to use that to like inform how you do your marketing and your link in bio and your CRM. And it's all these things. And so really like Chuka and I think around like 2020, we were just, first of all, personally fed up with like all this management just to get marketing done. And then secondly, I think we kind of saw that independence of music and at the same time, this idea of a creator being a real business, both were becoming true at the same time. And we realized the skill that we had of just like pulling together data, synthesizing it, marketing it, plus our tech skills, we combine it into something that could help a lot more people, hopefully to the scales of millions of folks, right? As we look at like the next 5 or 10 years, there's going to be like 50 to 100 million people trying to make money online. I think it's like 50, 60% of like Gen Z is intending to be freelance in some capacity. And so for us, it's just like we want to be their marketing tool, their one place where they can run ads, they can have link in bio, they can have the email list, they can track their data. And very soon they can use AI to do it all for them.
Amazing. It's a good description. But when did you guys meet? So I guess I know you guys started in music before, but let me just start with where you guys met. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, that goes back to, I guess it goes back to 2014. 2014, I was working with Childish Gambino, kind of during the off season, Donald was a multifaceted artist, so he was like working on a movie, and I was just really just tinkering on stuff and put out a call to action on the internet. Was just like, hey, is there anyone out there that would love to hack on music tech? And really didn't have a specific project in mind. It was just like, hey, like, I have a bunch of different ideas. I think we had this concept that we were calling the label machine at the time. And I think like Meg showed me a text not too long, but it was like, hey man, like when do you want to link up after your job at Hulu so we could brainstorm this label machine? And it was really, who knows what that concept even was, right? We laugh and joke about that till today, but um, it was through these hangs over time. Meg would kind of come in from his product job at Hulu after work, and us just coming and hanging, and like it would be homies from TDE just hanging. Through these hangs, we kind of found work and kind of like, we're like, hey, look, why don't we make an app for Schoolboy Q and do this thing? And then they're like, you know what, let's go meet Top about this. And that kind of unraveled and developed into us eventually working on what became CTRL and
Hmm.
kind of, all of SZA's stuff subsequently.
Yeah, but yeah, of course, we started 2014 was also what I asked when you met. But obviously, there's a big step from starting with music and working with Don and like working at Google as a product guy. So what sort of led you into technology to begin with, both of you?
Man, I guess mine was really interesting because, like, I was like very much immigrant kid, Indian parents, right? My path was like, all right, what are you gonna do, doctor or engineer, right? And it was like I was in school in Seattle during the time of tech becoming very much a thing, right? Like, think before like 2012, 2011, it wasn't cool to be a founder. That was like a rebellious thing. Like, you're not getting a job. And I think in that era, like Y Combinator became a thing that people talked about, and the startup hustle and venture capital, and there was like founder celebrities, and it was a very interesting time where like Silicon Valley almost became this mecca for just folks that had new ideas that wanted to build stuff. And so I was like just like always trying to find gigs at different startups when I was in school, right? Just to try and get like real world experience. So I was like 19 working full time as like a full stack engineer, like balancing school while like doing this real job at like a startup, just like trying to get into the field. But I think around, like, 2015 for me personally, everything kinda turned because I got kinda sick of tech and seeing how Silicon Valley culture kinda operated at that time, at least. It was very hypey sometimes. And at the same time, I got really into internet music culture, like Noisy by Vice. They were down in, like, Atlanta with the Migos and Chief Keef, and, like, talking to them, I was like, "This is dope. The internet can really storytell like this." And then on the other side, SoundCloud was blowing up for the first time. So, like, me and my homies were all just listening to Childish Gambino, listening to Chance the Rapper, Acid Rap. It was, like, a very early era in this, like, internet music thing, which we now know as, like, a foregone conclusion. Um, but just getting deeper into that, I was like, "Yo, I would love to, like, use my tech skills to, like, work with artists." And, like, I don't know what that looks like. I've never, like, really been to LA on any music stuff, but I just wanna take this leap of faith and, like, maybe not get this, like, crazy job in tech after school or go to Silicon Valley. Let me just move to LA. And then around that same time, intersecting with what Chuka was saying, like Chuka had posted in one of these like hackathon groups. Hackathons were really big, taking off early on back then. So Chuka had posted, and I was like, "Who's this guy posting?" Because I want to work on music tech, and like he had a photo with Childish Gambino, um, because he was working with him at the time. So I followed Chuka on Facebook. I just followed him. I didn't even add him. But I was like creative director at Childish Gambino. I was like, this is dope as hell. I don't even think we even necessarily like tapped in, but I was gonna go to LA to start working at Hulu that summer. And around January of 2016, I was like, "Yo, bro, like I'm gonna be in LA. Let's link. I want to work in music and build music tech stuff." And I think just like through that summer of working together, we ended up working with one of the craziest teams in music at TD and working with an artist like SZA. But it was very much like happenstance. It was like we met, started cooking, the right cook hit, and then that was the next 9 months of building out CTRL.
Hmm. And Chuka, we'll get to your story in a second, but I do have a question. Because when I talk with music tech founders, there's many different stories and there's many different narratives. The prevalent narrative is the incredible struggle that is to be in music tech, maybe compared to other tech industries. And again, when you sort of are associated to the us as you are, is that just like easy, or is there also something to like music marketing, music tech that is particularly difficult at this time, or was it just like tech in general right now?
I think I think it changes a lot, but I think historically music marketing has always been a very it's been a tactic. Tactics have shifted with the tide, so to speak, right? Like every 2 years, something changes. Like early on, it was like SoundCloud was new in 2016. Streaming hadn't really taken off the way it's taken off. Physical sales were still outpacing digital streaming, and so it was a very interesting time then with like music marketing and just like music tech. Where like it was an early, there wasn't even a concept necessarily of music tech in the way we know it today. Uh, so I think just like for just the way I look at it from like being a founder in music tech and the difficulty, I think like we've always been in it for the love of the game. And I think like you just keep climbing ladders to like find what the next level looks like for that love of the game. Now we're like music tech founders in an established field, but you can have been doing music tech before it was a buzzword or like a real thing, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Music marketing wise, it's the same thing. We were in the field every single day, hand to hand combat, working with artists, teams, managers. So it's really just like coming from a place at this point of having done it, like been in the problem space ourselves, having the problem ourselves, and then seeing other people have it. I don't know if I answered your question or not, and answered if you
No,
did.
well, to some degree, absolutely. I'm just trying to figure out basically how easy it was, how difficult it was, and I know there's nuances to that question. And what I'm really trying to fetch for is I'm trying to understand. There's this sort of glorified picture of LA sometimes. There's a glorified picture, maybe less so right now, but it used to be. And working with artists, and especially when they're established. And I fail to believe that that is the paradise it's sort of painted out to be. Uh, Again, it's for my own sake, and I'll hopefully also some of the.
Um, like I see what you're saying, Jake, and I could definitely talk, speak to this. I mean, it's not been easy. I mean, Meg also spoke to it too. Like, it's not been easy. The tides are constantly shifting from a marketing level, right? From an operational, like from these are me as an executive. Let's remove the other facets of being an executive that involves navigating music tech, right? Like from an operational standpoint, in order to be on top of your game, you have to be ahead. You have to be ahead because marketing is it's a door, right? What happens is one person, there's a tiny little crack, one person goes through it, boom, it amplifies, and then the next person sees it, they try to go through the same door, and that door just gets bigger and bigger, and there's less of an impact, and there's more people on the other side of the door. Um, and that's unfortunately that's how it works, when you look at, trends and ways that you want to position and present yourself. But then what you're indicating too is just like the actual, social side of navigating, especially as an entrepreneur where maybe you're not necessarily attached to an institution or a system. The networking is up to you, the deal making is up to you. All of that is kind of in a notoriously, this is often talks about too, it's an industry that's notoriously, the idiom is the game is sold, not told. The game is to be sold, not told. Meaning, coming from tech, where our idiom is pay it forward, right? Like, hey, like long before you could go and use AI to pair program it yourself, it was very common for you to just be able to walk into. I grew up in Boston. You just walk into MIT and sit next to somebody coding and ask them a million questions. And if it wasn't exam time, that person would probably answer all those questions happily. It was that culture of paying it forward. Like, how are we going to help? How are we going to, you know, invest in the next generation with information? Information is free, you know? Music is not like that. Information is a hard learned lesson. It usually is learned through mistakes, or maybe signing a bad contract. We hear that story oftentimes from the artist side, right? That's when they have the knowledge, right? It's after you experience it. Um, so I think, to Meg's point earlier about loving the game, that has to be part of it, right? Like you have to love it to take those blows, to be punched in the face by Mike Tyson. Like it's gonna happen. Luckily for us, we literally went toe to toe with the heaviest hitter. Well, for one of our first biggest clients was TDE. And if you kind of know the industry, they're not the easiest folks to be in partnership with or do business with because they do it their way. And I think it was a blessing to learn from them and get that experience from them because, afterwards it kind of felt like everything was a lot more easy to navigate and easier to navigate. Was it a cakewalk? No, but it was definitely easier to navigate.
Yeah. Makes sense. Where does that stem from? The you need to, buy it or it needs to be sold.
I think everyone has their own theories, to be honest. I'm not gonna like speak for the whole industry, but I think, I it's very obvious to me if you look at the roots of this industry, at least the commercial music industry, the record business, it came from the mafia. It came from, that street code of omerta of like, the mob was like that. We don't really talk. We don't. Everything is sold but not told. And I think like when you go back to at least the American recorded music industry of the artists performing in the classic speakeasies and the jazz clubs, and then them figuring out that they could print the records and sell the records, and who were those first distributors? It was the mob. I don't know. I think, of course, when it boomed, it wasn't the mob, but I think when you look at the DNA and the roots of just like you know how it started, it was predatorial. It was very much like we're gonna keep the artists out of how this thing fully works, right? Because like they just want to perform and they just want to, be in front of the crowd and we just give them a little bit of the pie and they'll be happy. And like that kept going long after the mob was, kind of, pushed out of it or whatever. And now we're in this time where the artists are now the central source of truth, right? You have successful artists now adopting the tech culture, like of paying it forward. Like, we've seen artists do everything from post their little contract, like, I don't know what happened. These are legacy artists. I don't know. They saying I'm not getting paid, guys. This is my contract. What do you think? Like, we've seen that.
Wow.
We've
Yeah.
seen we've seen artists tell artists, this is don't believe this, it's cheat codes. Right now there's an open conversation around whether or not monthly listener counts should be shown. And that is an artist started that conversation. And I
Hmm.
think that is all kind of pushing against the cultural grain of how this thing started. So there's hope for sure.
Hmm.
But yeah, man, to your point and to your question, the roots of it was very hush hush and predatorial.
Meg, was this a surprise for you? Because as far as I understand, you didn't come from music per se. Like, you come from the tech side and like I would love to work with artists.
I mean, I kind of jumped in knowing it'd be a grind, to be honest. I think when you see so many of the, like behind the scenes at a lot of these places, you start realizing why it is the way it is sometimes. And
Mhm.
I think you from the outside, the music industry has this pristine kind of idea or aura around it, right? It's like, oh, it's like music, they're making art, there's artists, and like now I think it's very different too, just like given how the internet has given much more a voice. But I don't know, I kind of came in expecting it to be rough. I think what I realized is that, oh, it's like actually very different behind the scenes, like think people
Mm.
are just operating in different ways than I expected. But I don't know, I kind of expect the journey to be something we just learn along the way, and myself personally.
Yeah.
Didn't think it'd be a cakewalk.
Amazing. And we'll cover your studio in a moment, but Chuka, I still do need to understand, like, 2014 working with Childish Gambino is, not something you just stumble upon. So how did you get there in your music journey?
Man, I won't lie, like my favorite movie of all time is Slumdog Millionaire. And I talk about it like a lot, but I really feel like there's a lot of parallels with that movie in my life just because I was at the right place at the right time, man. That's the best way I could put it. I was working with startups, with tech stars, in London at the time. And the reason why that's significant was, I was really young. I was 18, first time out the country and first just getting my first real projects under my belt. But I was in Europe in 2013, and the biggest startup in London was SoundCloud. Like every Friday, they had this massive office at Old Street and an open bar. They were booming. Like Meg said, it was their height, right? And like, so just being around that energy, like I walk, our office, Silicon Roundabout was what they called it those days, right? And so like our office was right down the street from SoundCloud, and seeing that, and then, we had this massive co-working space where, some of my early friends were, a Scandinavian startup called Driver. It was the early days, and they had early access to this brand new streaming app because only the Scandinavians had it. And that app was called Spotify. And like it was 2013. And like, what was I doing in Europe? I was just at the right place at the right time, and I think a lot of, that tech spirit of writing. I was doing a lot of writing about this stuff, and Tumblr was really big, and, being public about that and just engaging. I don't know how it happened, but Donald Glover definitely found my paper trail online, and it was very much open about talking about the desire to build things, and where I kind of saw music and tech and wanting to build stuff, like even being his biggest fan, like, everything, right? And so I don't know if he read all that stuff or whatnot, but, I got a cold email one day from his manager, who's still a really good friend of mine. And it was just like, hey, like, let's hop on this Zoom. And I couldn't, honestly, I was like, is this a prank? You know what I mean? And, I was in Europe at the time, and, it was, and just like that, we just started working. He was just, he was like, "Hey, I want you to take over my Tumblr, childishgambino.com." And it really didn't start as a rollout or marketing or any of these words that are like everyday speak for Meg and I now, and half of the industry. But it was just really like, man, like, let's just get this other opinion on the internet, and that's kind of how it started, organically. And we threw hackathons, we worked with WordPress and, companies like that. And, Donald was one of the first people to shout out a bunch of tech people on a mixtape that got published on TechCrunch. And I think it's crazy now because it's the meta, right? Like, you see like Kendrick like talking about Jack Dorsey and stuff like that. And it's dope. But I think it's just like, just kind of being in that energy. Uh kind of kicked it off. And at the time had no idea how the music industry worked. I had no idea how anybody made money. I thought, it was kind of like the behind the scenes of WWE. You think all the wrestlers are friends and they're all just hanging out backstage, right? And that was kind of like the moment where the veil kind of was revealed for me. Um,
Mm.
but I think, like the slow learning and learning, and being a student of it, and watching the industry kind of evolve, and understanding that everyone's also making stuff up as they go, helped a lot.
Amazing. And Meg, you guys started a studio together, do marketing for artists. You just decided, okay, it wouldn't be Label Machine, but it would be something else. And that's how sort of it started. And then you got these first clients. Like, how did that actually roll out in your lives?
It was very serendipitous. I'm not gonna lie. Like to Chuka's point, like I think we were just cooking on stuff. Like I go to Hulu in the daytime. I go to Chuka's like apartment in the evening. We just team up on ideas. Start working on this app for Schoolboy Q. And I actually had a year of classes left, right? So I was in at Hulu as an intern. So I had a full year of classes left in Seattle. So I was about to go back to Seattle for my last year of classes. And I was like, this is dope. Like I want to do this thing and like couple cool people and like just build things for artists. Um, I remember like I was actually in Vegas with my friends. Like I drove down from Seattle to LA, which is like an 18-hour drive, right? So I stopped over in Vegas, and Chuka calls me. He's like, "Yo, bro, like, why don't we just make this a thing? Like, let's just do this for more people." And I was like, "I have like school in Seattle." He was like, "Nah, just move down to LA. Let's just do it." And I remember I was like, "Damn, that sounds like super dope. Like, I would love to do that." So I actually drove back up the 18 hours to Seattle, and then I was like, you know what? This is actually, I just want to work with cool people. I want to work with Chuka. Like, we're already working on cool stuff. Like, I'll just drop out. So I told my parents, and they're like, you're not dropping out. You're actually not dropping out. That's crazy. You're 4 years in, you have a year left. You got to finish your classes. And so I was like, you know what? Let's make a deal. I'll finish school, but you got to let me move to LA. And so somehow I made them agree. They just saw the passion, I guess. And then I moved to LA, and that was like around the time we officially started Integral. Um, and I would fly back up, working with SZA on this project, and I would fly back up for midterms and fly back down. Like, there's this funny anecdote where I had like a Psych 101 midterm, right? Like very early elementary psychology class, just to get my credits, to get it out the way. And it was the same day we dropped SZA's website. Like, just she tweeted it out. And it was crazy because like we dropped it, we're like, yeah, it's dope. I walked in, 50 minutes, boom, 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 did my thing, walked out. Like a bunch of texts, bunch of calls. They're like, "Oh, the site crashed, the site crashed." It's like, "Oh, wow, okay, like this is kind of crazy." I just finished a midterm, but let me just go and do this little thing on the server. And yeah, it was super cool. Like we were just like cooking on things, and it wasn't ever promised, to be honest. Like Chuka was out there selling. We were working on concepts all the time. We'd send out a lot of pitches. Like we built a lot of augmented reality apps and 3D apps just for the pitch. And a lot of them turn into no's. But I think like you just need a few things to hit, right place, right time, right people. And it just became organically a thing where we're, started becoming the go-to for a lot of these labels out in LA to build really cool digital experiences. And I think 2018, it was like this very interesting pivot for us personally, where it was like, we've done all this cool stuff. We have all these great clients, but actually we're not making rent right now. Like this is actually not a scalable business. Like what else can we do with our skill set, with everything we kind of learned over time? Um, and digital marketing was like first on the list because we were doing digital marketing essentially, not running ads necessarily, but we were building these websites, pulling together this data, and we're like, why don't we just package this up and sell it to these people in a way that actually helps them grow? And so that was kind of the, I guess, pivot in a sense of Integral that led to this long journey into becoming just full stack digital guys, turning to Symphony essentially.
That makes sense. And that there's limits to what you can do, just two people or even just more people, like this services kind of business. And was it what was it in particular that wanted you to scale beyond what you could just deliver yourself? Like what was that impact? Was it money? What was it the thing?
I think our bank accounts were the first signal, right? Telling us that, hey, like we could all, like, it's like, all right, we started the company when we were fairly young. So we were all living together. We had the artists over. It was nice. But then it was like, okay, guys, how do we like build families and have kids out of this? Right. So that was the first signal. Um, and then also just, I think naturally, right, seeing the industry change, being first of like, look at this digital thing, this new thing. We were those guys that like, here, this new thing, guys. And even like, there'd be times where big labels would call us and be like, we have all this data, or this person went viral. Like, why? Can you guys like do the detective work and figure out what happened? This is before they had real analysts, right? At the labels. And so it was a wild, wild west. And basically um I lost my train of thought for a second.
Well, what was the motivation behind it? And that's where you're getting at. Yeah.
Eh, right, right. Yeah, exactly. So basically, like, kind of watching it transform from that Wild Wild West, like literally of just like, what do we do? We don't have any answers. We're still dumping all this money into radio, into PR, into traditional marketing. And then 2020, all the lights went off for
Mm.
everything, right? Right. Like the daily commute, like the numbers that the daily commute did to radio, right? Like just from that year, I just remember how much our phones would ring, you know, and TikTok blowing up. It was just like, we would have Meg in one room explaining it, TikTok to an artist, myself in another room explaining it. It was insane. So it was like, all right, this digital thing is becoming the main show in town. It's not like, it's no longer this like side thing on the side. Like, even the digital folks at the labels are exhausted, right? Are over, even till this day, are kind of overborn over it's an overbearing task, right? To kind of conduct the orchestra of digital, that is the stack of digital, at the right time, the right sequence, the right signal testing. Um, and so it was like, I looked at Meg and I was like, we need to make, of course, at the time we had internal processes, right? We had, this is kind of a winded way or disconnected way to say it, but internally we had already built some software that was helping us scale up our processes because, back to the bank account, we it was either hiring, in your analogy earlier, it was either hiring more people or build technology to help us scale out our processes. So internally, we had ways that we could spin up campaigns really fast, ways that we could pull audiences fast, ways that we could surface and report really fast, right? But it became a thing of like, all right, well, this is past our technology. Like, we need to let people just go in and run it themselves and test things themselves and test theses themselves because it's moving faster. And that was kind of where the main motivation came from Symphony, like from a customer demand standpoint, kind of seeing the signal in the audience too. And then also just thinking about DIY, right? Like Billie Eilish won Best New Artist and and Album of the Year in 2020. That was the year. That was the same year. She was technically a brand new artist. The year she broke. It was the album of the year. The album was executively produced by her brother. That
Mm.
is like peak DIY. And then so, I looked at Megan, I was like, yo, the next Billie Eilish is gonna be From Home all the way. Like,
Mm.
what are they gonna use? And that was when we really kind of went down this path of like, all right, let's just give everybody the tools and like completely stop the gatekeeping that is like the industry, right?
It's so interesting, and that's one of the things that, frankly speaking, confuses me the most because yeah, maybe you can dissect this for me because I do see the DIY movement and I do see assets breaking at scale, but I don't necessarily see the power of the majors sort of disappearing. There's no good or bad to that statement. But where do you see that dynamic now, like 5 years later? Do you see like that the power is in the DIY, or is it still an infrastructure, like a whole thing you need to go through?
I think there's levels to it, like anything else. I think before, right? I think prior to the game, especially because of like the way it worked, going back, like the Mickey Mouse Club is the analogy I always use, right? They used to pick our stars, and the stars were set up. Everything was pre-set up. The business, the format, everything was pre-set up, and then the audience was built in, and then that was it. And so everything felt like larger than life, regardless of whatever the reality was, right? There were just these
Mm,
super mega stars. They were super mega rich. They came out super mega rich. They came out big, and that kind of really affected or affects the way that artists and creatives think about development, right? The
mm,
desire was never like very now we're in this era of like I could just be a business. Like I could just be a touring recording artist and make as much as a dentist or a doctor, or I can make 250K a year, I can make 500K a year. And people are is a desirable goal, is like a real aspiring thing to achieve today. And I think before in the eras before it was never that obvious. This middle tier, this middle class, it even exists it would exist, but these stories weren't championed. They weren't as wide or spread. You would hear of artists like Tech Nine, who was like historically one of the biggest, independent artists in America and has owns his own touring fleet. Everyone knew the story, the legend, but you wouldn't see that on Billboard, right? But
mm.
now you're starting to see the big X the plugs. Now you're talking, everyone knows about Russ, everyone knows La Russell, everyone, and so I I would say the power of the labels, to your point, though, it hasn't completely faded because there's the levels, it's levels to everything. So there's
Mm.
like, if you still want that superstardom level, a real shot at that, I would say, yeah, you're probably gonna reach an inflection point in your business or where it makes sense to get an investor or a partner that can help you go to that next level. But if you're fine with being at whatever that inflection point is, that doesn't necessarily mean that, you could have a long career. Some would say, what happens is oftentimes now the rocket ship stuff that goes all the way at the top, it's kind of the curve on it. The charts end up being like this hype cycle and then it just drops off, right? But the
Mm,
more steady builds, and then
mm.
maybe they have the big moment ends up being, more sustainable. So it's really about how you want to build your business now as a creative, I would say.
That analogy also fits to your trajectory, I guess, and also like where you
Yeah.
go. Like you were at that inflection point. Like I had a reflection yesterday with my colleagues. So Amplitude Ventures, we around 70, 75 people in our venture studio, and you know, uh, we've scaled and pivoted a few times ago. But like honestly, a year ago we were three because we just scaled down again. And oh, sorry, I need to remove those emotions. But so now we had like a client yesterday, and basically they needed something, and they didn't really need what they thought it would. So we okay, consultancy is the only thing, and we're calculating on it. Like even if I price myself at uh, a few hundred US dollars per hour, which a year ago for me would be amazing. Like then I can really make a living. Now it just doesn't make sense anymore because I'm playing a different game now. Like, and it's not that that's not valid. I would love that for myself a year ago, but now that does not make sense at all because I'm trying to play a bigger game. And it doesn't mean that, I'm in a, you know, much better place now because you're playing the big game. You need to pay people salaries. But still, it's
Exactly.
that inflection point was not where I wanted to be. I didn't want to, be dependent on my own, sh- you know. services being provided hour by hour, like that's not where I wanted to be. And I guess that's also what you felt about, well, one thing is impact, of course, you want to go beyond that. And but that is a transition and that comes with pains, I guess. So Meg, how did you go about it? Like did you just go out and try to raise capital, or like was it a more organic approach?
It was definitely like finessing check by check early on. I'm not gonna lie, because especially when we're coming in too, you got to think about just the creator economy is blowing up 2020, 2021. I still think the music industry, even today, right? Like I think music tech still has this kind of shadow on it when it comes to VCs and how they think about it. And that was before music tech became a category that like it is today. And so we're just going to these rooms pitching these VCs and they'd be like, oh, like there's not enough artists in the world, for sustain this. And we're actually pitching a marketing tool that anyone could use. But I think our pitch at the time was very much like, we're going after artists and we're trying to run this, to take over music. And I think a lot of it did come to fruition in different ways. But early on, it was a bunch of doors shut in our face. A lot of folks being like, this doesn't make sense. Like, this isn't a VC backable business. And then slowly but surely, like we got some managers on board, we got some like customers on board. We got some just and mentors from the industry on board. And then, got our first institutional check. Um, it hasn't been the easiest thing though to like figure out the fundraising piece of this, just because there's this or from where we're coming from the music industry, right? So it's like a very different world that we're stepping into sometimes. The arena's a little bit different. Um, right there, you just gotta get it how you can. That's like the one thing I've learned, right? You just gotta get it how you can, and like you'll see. I feel like for a lot of founders, they'll see like, oh, like this company raised 20 million at this valuation, and then you go behind the scenes, and it's like not set up to actually be a real business over time. So I think Chuka and I too, just coming from the side of building like a proper business, like we've always just been cognizant of like how do we build this correctly? How do we raise money from the right people, the right places, not raise too much, hopefully, so we can build this into something that actually grows in the way we want it to.
Hmm. And was that done while you were still running your existing business? Like what was the timeline there?
We kind of like almost had a hard transition. Like there was a moment in time where Chuka and I were like, oh, like we got to split focus. And I think it was maybe like a year in. Um, and yeah, we were like, all right, Chuka's gonna like take over like the artist facing business and like the agency side stuff. I'm gonna, shepherd these like early developers we'd hired from these angel checks into building the MVP of this thing so we can show people what it is. But yeah, it was a very conscious decision where it was like, all right, shut off this side of my brain. Chuka leans in with one foot on this side and then most of the time on the other side. Yeah.
What was your risk perception at that time? Did I feel like this is maybe a bit dangerous for you guys, or?
I mean, you want to say something?
Everything's dangerous without a plan, but I mean, we definitely put a really good plan in place that we felt good about, right? Like it was like we weighed it out. It was like, okay, like do we shut down the agency fully? Like those are real questions, But we have, we're SZA's agency of record for, as long as she's putting out music, right? We have artists that we knew like when they come and when they're ready, probably not going to be able to, be able to just turn the other cheek at. Like it's a relationship. Those are our friends, right? So we were weighing that with this also, just like, all right, even if we're going to do that, then knowing what we're really trying to do here and signing up for, what does the transition plan look like? Like, okay, who can fill in, right? Like if Meg steps out, how do we fill that gap in the agency, right? When I step out now, who's gonna fill that gap, right? And
Yeah.
really just making the transition plan. And I think it worked out. It didn't happen overnight. I think the mindset of the intention is what matters the most, of just like we're doing this and knowing this is what we're doing. But yeah, I mean, it took like, you know, 8 months, 8 to 12 months, and like, the studio is doing really great still. They have, it's being run by a great CEO in Fredo, and the things that you're always super anxious about sometimes in business, you just have to go in and do, right? Like the biggest thing for me was like, who's gonna do the relationships? But like all of that stuff has transitioned smoothly, so it's great. Yeah.
Hmm. But obviously there's you mentioned relationships. There's a big difference between your previous model and then what you're doing now. Like, you can't scale on relationships the way that you need to if you build a platform. So how did you navigate that?
I mean, I think it's something we're still figuring out how to navigate, like, in the best way. I think there's obviously people that come to us from word of mouth, like, Chuka and I are talking to teams every week that we see on the platform, or we just see their name pop up in the email list sign out, a list of, sign up emails. Um, but sometimes it's very interesting where like something will just be going crazy. And like we see a symphony link in someone's bio that has a song going wild. And we're like, oh, they're a symphony user. That's crazy. So a lot of it sometimes is like just reactive to people using the platform and having, getting progress. And then we're like, all right, let's lean in and let's see if they need any help or best practices, strategies. But I think it's something we're still, at least from my side, I'm still trying to figure out how to balance that because I think there's great points and feedback and conversations coming in from our friends and word of mouth and just connects in LA, New York, all over the world. And then there's just organic things happening. Like Chuka was talking about Billie Eilish earlier in 2020, right? Like the next Billie Eilish, the next generation of artists will be using something like Symphony, if not Symphony specifically, right? Having a tool to do all this for you. And so I think we're also trying to get better at leaning into our audience and being like, okay, who's in here going crazy? Who's bubbling? How can we, kind of lend a hand of support as it continues scaling?
Hmm.
Totally, yeah. I mean, as a business owner, you're never not talking to customers. It's the challenge is like which feedback is the most, like valuable to you as a business owner. Um, so you always have to talk to folks, it's just, yeah, you just have to like the discernment is like even more important at scale because it's like hundreds of thousands of people that would love to give you a piece of their mind. Yeah.
I have a question which might be a bit weird, but um, so you come from a business model studio where you would have what I would believe to be like, hype moments, like meeting with an artist you love or, being a part of something incredibly interesting release. And it's all these sort of external motivators, stimuli that's sort of in your life, and very exciting and also very prestigious to going to, a tech platform. And I can imagine the contrast being quite big because, I don't know the depths of the journey, but generally speaking with a lot of founders, like that's really lonely and less reactive and it's a totally different game. Like how did you navigate that dynamic?
I mean,
I'll
from
speak
my
from
side,
my side. Oh,
I
you
go.
got it. Yeah.
Well, I guess it's been different. I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely been different, right? I think it was really dope because, like, I remember just this years where we'd have like a list of the 20 biggest artists that year, and they were on our client list, right? And like that'd be back to back to back to back for like 5, 6 years straight, and then moving into Symphony, where it's like the wins are different, right? The wins are different. The true north of everything we're doing is different. I think there's more at stake, but there's also higher volume opportunities to touch more folks and have more of those moments. I think for us, it's really been rallying around product and taking these ideas we had and like things we hear from people and just turning them into products. So we try and be very, very like we're getting better at it, but we try and be very like product led. Where if you ask artists or ask folks around about Symphony and what Symphony is about, it's about just like dropping cool new stuff all the time. So for me, at least, that's been like the moments that kind of evoke that past era of like, oh, we got the biggest artists in the world this week working with us. I think it's just like, oh, we dropped something that like 100,000 people can now use like this, and we blast them an email, and it's like, oh, cool. It's like we make our own wins versus having to sometimes work with someone else to be attached to that win.
Hmm. Yeah, and I see that. But again, there must still be like some sort of like aspect to it that is negative in a way, I guess, because like
Oh
again,
man, I got you. I got
okay.
you on that. I mean, I got you. Like, it's been tough, man. It's been an adjustment. Like, I'm not gonna be real. Like, it's been a straight up adjustment. Like for me, because I knew, right? Like mentally, I was like, all right, I need to my mentality needs to shift and be in this place. And LA is a very for building a business in all relationships, like you described, right? In the agency world and being the sales like face. I was like, I can't be in LA because it's just whenever I'm there, it's access. People are used to me just being around and hanging out and doing this, and they're like, this is not the same mindset. So I was like, I'm gonna intentionally move to Austin, and it's not gonna cut off all the relationships, but it'll serve as a filter because there is a lot of fluff and a lot of just kind of hand waving relationships, right? That comes with networking in big cities like LA and New York. So to your first earlier point, man, it's lonely, right? It is immediately, especially when like ear every single day is is by people. Like most of the time I'm trying to dodge a meeting, right? And that, for the last few years, it's like that, right? Or hoping something falls off the calendar. And then you come here and it's like, very different culture, right? Austin's a very big tech city. Everyone's, and for the most part, they're not here unless they're employed in tech usually. And it's usually sales, marketing, engineering, and they're not really wanting to talk about work in the same way LA is like, everyone wears the Boy Scout badge or the Girl Scout badge. Like my work is like my identity out there, right? So you come out to places like this, there's like your ego dies immediately because no one wants to talk about that. There's New Music Friday's over. Friday's just a regular old, like, are we going out to the bars Friday? No one cares if a playlist hit or if you have the new song. Chances are they're not playing it. They're playing top 40s hits. So, but that was the difficulty that I knew I was, it was the medicine I knew I had to take. Why? Because it allowed me to, one, now I've like my whole POV is washed, reset, a hard reset. And now it allows me to like think like my customer. I could think like the folks that are running their labels and they're just trying to be operators, or the people that are getting up and just going to label and doing their job, or the regular old artist that just needs to make it from Austin, Texas, and needs to figure
Mhm.
out, if I was in Austin, how's the fastest way I could just get and grow out from here? And even more importantly, it's made me a fan again because
Yeah.
being around the industry it's like it's different, right? Like you're listening to what most people are listening to. You're like trying to know what the cool thing is that everyone's list that's kind of, it's like the irony of like in the art of A&R, right? Like everyone wants fresh blood. They want someone that's outside, or maybe they're just from college, or it's because when you become part of the like amoeba, you just like join it, and like everyone's literally talking about the same artists, the same signings, then you leave it, and I'm like, man, I love music again. I'm like listening to stuff that no one's listening to, and I don't care, and like it's exciting again. But man, the journey, the ego death to that, painful. Like if you can survive it, like beautiful on the other side. Um, but
It
yeah.
it's so interesting, and, it really brings some thoughts up that I've been reflecting upon lately, that there is, like, a big disconnect between music and music tech, in the actual reality of the execution. Um, like a small I was actually just, a few hours ago, I was talking with my brother-in-law, and obviously I've been in music for a while, pretty much my whole, grown career, and I've been audio engineering and do festivals and booking. Like, I also come from a heavy, like, music side, and I've been doing that, for 14 years or so, and I was going to a festival tomorrow, and he asked, "Oh, so have you been at a festival before?" And I actually realized I had never this is my first time ever to be at a festival as a guest. Uh, like, ever. Like, I've had a
That's an experience. That's a whole experience too.
But my point is, like, even though I've been in the industry, like, there is a disconnection between being in music, being in tech, being in the industry, being a consumer. Like, even though it seems like the same thing, and it is sort of is in a way, they are disconnected. And that's also the beauty, but also maybe the danger. And what people don't realize about music tech once in a while is, like, it is not that glorious. Like, I get to hang out with amazing industry people. Some of my guests and some of the people I know in private are, like, some of the globally leading entrepreneurs in music tech. How many artists do we hang out with? Zero. Like, it's that dislocated for me, and I'm fine with that. But it is not the same, even though it touches the same. Does that make sense?
Right. Right.
So I
Yeah.
think it's just the thing. And I was that a shock for you guys?
I don't know. I kind of felt because tech, right? There's like I music tech specifically. I don't know. I think there's a new class coming up. I'm not gonna act like, oh, we're the coolest kids at lunch now. I think there's a new class of music tech founders coming up though. That are like the younger they're gonna get because the internetness of it all. The younger they're
Mm.
gonna get, they're gonna be like you might have dudes like you've seen them. There's music tech founders that are like doing art, the music tech founders that are managing artists. So there's gonna be like a younger class of folks that are tapped a lot more culturally tapped in. I think the balance of like how the balance of how much technologically fundamental, like how much of the tech fundamentals they have is gonna be like TBD. But, I mean, the tech world is so disconnected, man. Like it's like I've always kind of known that. And like I think I'm lucky because I saw it first, right? And I always tell the story of the analogy of like, one of my first jobs, I was an intern for this party, and it was like a demo party in the Bay called SS Beta. And, like some of the guys that would come to these things, some of the VIPs that would come to these things, we would get to hang with them on very much like music. There was like a green room set up and like a little backstage area. And I'm not going to name anyone's names, but these were like CEOs, CTOs of public companies, right? And like people think that they're like not as similar, culturally similar. Like we're all kind of nerds in our own way, but we're just nerdy about different things. So the tech guys like are backstage, and like I remember like we had a party that was like vampire themed, and we had like a dude coming in that was just making custom fangs, had the inlays. People were like getting, their basically, like, if you've ever seen someone get grills before, an artist get grills before, it's the same setup as, like, when the grill guy's at the house, like, literally, it's the same setup, but he's making, like, custom fangs because these guys are, like, all wanna be, like, Draculaed out, right? Like, this is a real thing, and I'm, like, seeing this is, like, before the party, and, like, they're getting fanged up, and I'm like, "Okay," and then, like, years later, I'm, like, doing the same thing, but with rappers who are just getting grills, I'm like, "Man, this thing is, like, literally the same but different." Like, it's crazy. The actual folks, like, are very similar, and I think that is why, like, there is, like, when you see, like, folks like Jack and Kendrick Lincoln, like, you do because the actual, like, founders, there's a lot of similar DNA with the artists because artists are founders, low key, right? Like, the most successful ones are. So there's a lot of similar DNA there, but it's weird. Like music tech, yeah, oftentimes founders are very, very removed from, the culture. And it's weird because the internet is shifted now. There used to be this time where you could be, you really could be like you could make culture. You could just like culture was kind of wide open and writable, I think, where like as a founder, you could just kind of like make things that change paradigms, right? Like Reddit completely changed the way people digest news, right? And like, and socials with Facebook. And I just think now that we're all on it, like the rest of the culture has now been on ramped to the internet through these like first wave platforms. Gonna have to be in it to make the next one, and
Mm.
we've seen that's why VR is struggling to adopt right now, right?
Mm.
So as much as like I love VR, the folks like techies like us like clocking hours in VR, but when is that gonna arrive for everybody else, right? To your point, the disconnect. So
Mm. We had a guest on the podcast called Mike Holland that you might know, manager of Logic, and he really described something that I've been thinking for a couple of years, and that is the next generation of artists and how they're going to operate. His assumption is they're going to be business and music are going to be the same thing. It's going to be incredibly intertwined. Like when you grow up with music as a music producer, creator, artist, business is going to be such a vital part of how you think and how you execute. And also to the point of Symphony, I guess that's also sort of what you're enabling. Is that enabling that next? Well, obviously, currently artists and people who are successful, but also next generation of artists where data and fandom and marketing is going to be totally intertwined with music and creativity. Is that what you see?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think it's always been about respecting people with a passion that are trying to monetize online the same way you'd respect any other economic category, right? I think that's like the key insight in how we've kind of built where like, you do have kids out there that are putting out music and making 50K a month, just like that, right? Or like a year, whatever. Like that's the internet we live in today. And I think for us, it's always been this concept of like, oh, cool. Like these folks will need real business tools the same way like we as a business pay for HubSpot, the same way another small business might pay for Gusto or whatever it may be. I think this class of like content driven businesses, they're putting out music, podcasts, videos, Twitch streaming, whatever. They're very much businesses. And I think for us too, thinking about the artists, it's like, how do we give them these tools to help them go from 0 to 1? Or always kind of support them every step of that way when it comes to the marketing side of things.
Mm. So where are you guys going with Symphony? Where are you guys as a company now, and sort of what's the future for it?
think
right?
making it easy for me, I think, making it easier, as easy as possible for you to come into our app with an outcome in mind and just reaching that outcome, whether you want to grow, whether you want to sell your tickets to your tour, sell your merch, sell your new products, drive people, capture your data or just analyze your data. It's like the three things, right? Data capture, data analysis, and execution. We want to make it as easy as possible to do all of that. And,
Mm.
we really love the way that we've seen the adoption of all these AI tools now. It's becoming very easy to instantiate and execute, at least pull information with voice, with text, I think we're entering this era of native prompting. Like, the next generation of kids might even speak in prompt, who knows, right? Um, so we're really excited about that and exploring what it looks like to just be able to execute right from, as easy as possible from idea to live.
Hmm.
Maybe you don't even need, maybe you won't even need to come with content. So
And and,
we're really
it's
excited.
happening already, and it's amazing to have tech sort of addressing that. Again, I'm gonna sort of end the point soon, but I was talking with my partner today. We had a client meeting, and sort of we had just closed, and we were doing a sale, and I was debriefing my team afterwards of the meeting, and I spoke in a certain way, and my partner sort of wrote me like, "Hey, why did you talk like that? Like that was, it seemed like super basic. Like these guys are pretty talented." I'm like, "No, actually, I was talking to the AI note taker." Because I just wanted to make sure that I could prompt this afterwards. Like, already now, like, I'm more obsessed with communicating in a way that I know that I can make AI outcomes after than actually to my team. And that struck me, like, I'm
Yes.
actually like, my again, I think it's valid because my time as a CEO with a lot of people responsible, like, it's pretty valuable, so I need to communicate in a way that, serves the long-term mission. But again, I had already change my communication style because the AI note taker was there, and I felt that was more important to get that down. And so but but to your point, like things are changing like incredibly fast, and the way that people interact with technology is going to be very different. Yeah.
I'm excited, man. I love that footnote. Yeah, like I love that footnote. I mean, it's only gonna get interesting, right? They started teasing today the device that Johnny Ive had made with OpenAI. Or so I think this world of like always listening, always on, it's only gonna get crazier. I mean, it's definitely starting to look Orwellian a little bit, but I'm excited about it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely been tinkering in like really deep ways with like voice and video and images and just like text-based large language models. And I think, yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like just like playing with these things and giving it, just tools that it can use. You can really get a lot done in this next era just off of this text box. And like we're really excited by that from a product place and like a technological place. But I think too, solving this problem, right? Like Symphony as a marketing tool, we want to be everyone globally, everyone's marketing platform, right? Everyone across the world, different languages, all of that. And I think to what Yuka is saying too, like we're thinking about ways of like some kid in Mumbai, India, who doesn't speak English but has 50 rupees to market his record in some way and start talking in Hindi to the system that we built out, and it gives him or her a marketing plan, and lets them execute it without any knowledge of marketing, without any accesses besides the Symphony and our agent. I think that's where it gets really exciting. Bringing this knowledge we've been training ourselves on for like 10 years to a million more people all over the world and empowering them with marketing tech.
Amazing. And I think that's it. That's the key for the DIY industry and the industry at large because the majors or the big independents, they don't really have these tools either. Like it is we need to create it now, and which you're doing. So guys, it's been an honor to sort of hear your story, and I really look forward to following you for many years to come. You've already made a pretty big splash in the industry, and you're doing well. But I know every single journey as a founder is just incredibly long and fun and hard and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very interested and very excited to follow that journey.
Appreciate
Yeah,
you,
we gotta
man.
go, for real. Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
guys. We'll talk soon.